Labour's proposed plan to impose a 20% VAT on private school fees has raised significant concerns about its impact on children, particularly with special educational needs and disabilities, children who don't fit into conventional streamlined needs, and who may have had difficulty getting an educational health and an educational health and care plan, an EHCP, which will be excluded from Labour's plans, and the problem is many people have struggled to get that EHCP. Because it's very complex to do that. I remember being involved in helping a few children to get those plans and how difficult that was, and there are many children who have complex educational, emotional, social needs, who have various disabilities, who are definitely on the SEND scale, and who are greatly helped by schools which are better equipped to deal with their needs. And for the most part, the comprehensive system is already struggling to deal with the needs of large classes and large groups of children. And in fact, the personal attention which is required often by more specialist, or which is provided often by more specialist schools, simply cannot be met. And it's got very little to do with elite education, it's got very little to do with class, and it's got very little to do with sort of convention. It's to do with meeting a child's needs, and one child is very different to another child, and we should recognise that that 6,500 new state school teachers simply do not exist, no matter whether you pay or don't pay for them. They simply aren't there, and money which is raised is not going to provide teachers out of the blue to take up places in state schools simply because money has been created by penalising another sector. So whether they're high achievers or whether they are whether they are high achievers or whether they have specific disabilities that are perhaps difficult to assess, these are vulnerable children, as Amanda Spielman, who's the boss of Ofsted, not one of my favourite organisations, not one of my favourite people, has suggested today in an interview. And I think what she says needs to be considered. And she's voiced her concerns, highlighting the additional costs that could force some families to withdraw their children from private schools where they are settled and which are better equipped to meet their specific needs. The increased fees due to the VAT imposition could make private education unaffordable for many of these families, particularly for those who have SEND. And these children often require the specialised support and smaller class sizes that private schools can sometimes provide, but by no means are certain to provide. And the sudden increase in costs could lead to an exodus, particularly of SEND children, from private schools to state schools, which are not equipped to cater for their needs adequately. There have been instances where schools have struggled under the increased fees, for example at Downing Preparatory School in Norfolk, which serves a significant number of SEND students. It's announced its closure, citing the financial pressures anticipated from Labour's VAT plan. The closure of such schools disrupts education and fractures the support system for many vulnerable children, leading to adverse educational and social outcomes. And the same is true, I think, of language schools and crammers. And we've already seen the danger that that can be caused by For example, the Home Office. Yet again, we talk about the Home Office and the hostile environment, which demands new visas for students who are studying here in the UK, particularly as they enter their A-level years, and this often leads to them being excluded from school, being sent home to their own country or whatever, and having great difficulty struggling to get back into this country to finish their education, and therefore destroying their hopes of the higher level of university access which they had hoped to achieve, and which they certainly could achieve. I, for example, have known of, I think, 6 of these situations, and I brought a number of them to the attention of Theresa May when this policy first became evident, and she didn't particularly care very much for what I was saying, but it doesn't diminish the reality that we are putting forward into the wider international community, the idea that we have this advanced education system, and then we are making sure that it doesn't work. So it's not just the Labour Party, it's the Conservative Party as well, which has messed up our education system. Not only the state education system, but also the private education system. The entire thing is fractured, the entire thing is messed up, and not helped by Spillman's Ofsted. When children are forced to leave the education that they are tied up with, this has a huge impact on their life then and later, and it causes incredible strain on the limited resources and potentially reduces the quality of education and support that is available to them, particularly those with SEND who require that more specialised attention. Abrupt transitions from one educational setting to another can be particularly challenging for any child, and particularly for SEND children, causing anxiety and disruption in their learning, in their social development, in their aspirations. Consistency and stability are crucial for children's well-being, and forced moves, for whatever reason, can have long-lasting negative effects. And I don't think the political advantages outweigh the structural destruction that the VAT thing is likely to cause. There are other ways of generating that money, and Labour's proposed VAT on private school fees is supposed to be only to generate additional revenue, but clearly has an ideological directive, as indeed is demonstrated by Angela Rayner's other statements from as recently as 2018, that she thinks that all students should be educated in comprehensive schools. So that obliterates the grammar school system as well, which in many ways, as an educationalist, I can say with my hand on my heart is better at producing good academic results than the private schools and the independent schools, and certainly the majority of the smaller independent schools. And some of the larger independent schools, like, for example, Harrow, are so locked in their particular idée fixe that those children who fall outside the mould that is conventionally anticipated are equally unable to make their mark educationally, academically, and they would be much better off in a grammar school where basic academic rigour, basic academic expectations are there to be applied in whatever subject is chosen. And students who have learnt that academic rigour can then go on, for example, to homeschooling or schooling in a private crammer, or indeed going on to a comprehensive school where they could perhaps select, or a sixth form college where they could perhaps select exams in the subjects which they have chosen, with the knowledge that they have acquired that academic rigour. Without that academic rigour, students are almost incapable of pursuing a subject in ones or twos in a particular subject choice. And that academic rigour is supremely taught in the grammar schools. It is not taught in the comprehensive schools and is rarely taught in the private school system. So Angela Rayner's bias is clear. She would like everybody in a comprehensive school, and I don't think comprehensive schools are set up to teach everybody. If they were, I would recommend them, but they're not. And Labour's proposals will lead, has already led to school closures, and may force many children into mainstream schools that are ill-equipped to meet their needs, and exacerbating the challenges faced by these students and their families, and also adding new challenges to students already in those schools. The broader impact on the education system, the well-being of these children, needs careful consideration to avoid severe negative outcomes. And what we should be doing is not so much penalising one particular educational stream, but trying to improve the entire lot. And that means learning from the COVID experience and changing the way we deliver education. There are methods out there, and they're not being used, and we're relying on methodology which was effectively championed in the early 1960s, is out of date, doesn't work, and is the only ideology available, in fact, and has gradually taken over every form of education that we've got in this country, and we are the poorer for it. We'd be much better off with looking at how we deliver education, rather than to whom we deliver education and how much it costs. And as for VAT on education, VAT is not, or where VAT is put on education in the state system, it's clawed back. And we should really be treating all educational outlets in the same way. The idea that one form of education is a business and another is not. In fact, the people who are going to private schools have already paid their tax to support the state system, so they're paying twice in any case. It seems shoddy and untruthful, and I don't think it's going to work, which is probably the most important thing. You can't create so many thousands of teachers when they don't exist in the education system anyway. Where are you going to get them from? Abroad? Is it going to be another migration thing?